Thom Hartmann here on the best of the rest of science and green news. You need to know this. The D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals says that it's time to end the era of privatize the gain and socialize the losses. Last week, the public interest law firm Earth Justice broke the news that one of our nation's highest courts says it's time for the EPA to make polluters pay to clean up their own messes. Working on behalf of conservation groups, Earth Justice attorneys filed suit to demand that the Environmental Protection Agency finalize so-called financial assurance rules that require companies stay viable financially enough to pay for the potential cleanup of any toxic substances that they produce. In other words, these rules prevent companies from causing a toxic spill and then declaring bankruptcy to avoid the cost of cleaning up. And these rules have actually been in place since 1983, when they were issued as part of the EPA's Superfund law, but that agency pretty much ignored them until a 2009 court ruling ordered the EPA to start enforcing the restrictions. Since that 2009 case, the agency had once again started to ignore these important rules, which left taxpayers picking up the tab for toxic spills. So Earth Justice and other groups filed suit to force the agency to follow the rules that are already on the books. And the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals agreed that corporations, not taxpayers, should pay to clean up their own disasters. Their ruling said, quote, "It is a common practice for operators of sites that produce hazardous substances to avoid paying environmental liabilities by declaring bankruptcy or otherwise sheltering assets," end quote. And they agreed that holding corporations accountable will also give them a financial incentive to make their businesses as safe as possible to begin with. Amanda Gooden, one of the attorneys for Earth Justice, said, quote, "Today's court ruling is clear. We will no longer see polluters cheating the system, evading their financial obligations, and skipping town on their toxic messes, leaving taxpayers stuck with hefty cleanup bills," end quote. Next time a big company considers skimping on safety in the name of profit, they will have to be willing to back up that decision with corporate dollars. Artificial intelligence is no longer the stuff of science fiction. Last month, a computer beat a professional player in the ancient Eastern board game known as Go. While that news may not seem much different than the computer that beat chess champion Garry Kasparov 18 years ago, the game Go is much more computationally demanding than the game of chess. In fact, just a decade ago, some researchers thought that a computer could never defeat a human in the game, because there can be literally trillions of different options at some points in the game. That's why this new computer program, known as AlphaGo, uses more calculations and more than calculations to decide how to move in the game. AlphaGo actually relies on deep neural networks, which mimic the neurons in the brain and allow the computer to learn which moves will lead to victory. For their experiment, researchers trained the AlphaGo network by feeding it a database of 30 million configurations for the game board and the moves that expert players took in each instance. The computer used that knowledge to beat the 2013 European Go champion, and it will take on the South Korean Go champion next month in Seoul. We can only imagine how and where this incredible technology will pop up next. Maine may be stuck with Paul LePage for another 2 years, but they may get a little help reducing the stress of living under their extreme right-wing governor. According to Philip Smith over at Alternate, Mainers will get to vote for marijuana legalization on the ballot this November. This ballot initiative would allow people 21 years and older to possess up to 2.5 ounces of pot or a limited number of plants. And it would set up a system of regulation, licensing, and marijuana taxation. Legalized pot has been a huge success in states that have ended prohibition, and the people of Maine should have the right to reap those rewards. Until recently, scientists believed that early humans ate mostly vegetables and the large game animals that they hunted. But according to researchers studying caves near Tel Aviv, our early ancestors had a taste for roasted tortoise. Scientists discovered the bones and shells while studying the Qasem Cave in Israel, which has a rich record of Paleolithic humans. In addition to the evidence of game animals like deer and cattle, researchers found tortoise shells and bones at various levels throughout the cave. They said the tool marks indicate that most of the tortoises were roasted in their shells and were likely used to supplement the diets of our ancient ancestors. We tend to think of our ancestors as primitive beings, but discoveries like this prove that early humans were just as complex as the modern version. And finally, Environmental groups are declaring victory for the Great Bear Rainforest. Last week, British Columbia officials announced a landmark deal to protect that Canadian rainforest that's home to 26 First Nation tribes and the spirit bear, a rare subspecies of black bear that has white fur. That new agreement protects 85% of the rainforest from development and destruction, and it subjects the remaining 15% to the most stringent environmental standards in North America. The Great Bear Rainforest is a unique ecosystem that is often called a gift to the world. Thankfully, these strong protections will help the First Nations peoples and preserve this wonderful gift for generations to come. And that's the way it is for the week of February 8th, 2016. I'm Thom Hartmann on Science and Green News.